welcome to another video from Tropiclord. So it's late October 2024, we're fast approaching the winter period and a lot of the plants are now looking past their best. And although it's still quite mild for November at the moment, it's a good time to be thinking about winter protection as the season approaches. And if you're not from the UK, you may not know that our winters, whilst being cold, are also quite wet, and the combination of cold and wet is what can destroy a lot of the plants that I grow. First things first, let's gather the tender plants together. Here's a collection of my more tender plants that will need some attention when it comes to overwintering. My Alocasia macrorrhiza, which I absolutely love, but it can't remain outdoors for the winter. Got a selection of Colocasia in there, blue Hawaii, marigold, white lava, that lovely white vein there. I've also got an Escalenta there, which was a division from the main corm, which I'm really pleased about. It grew really well. A canna there, an Alocasia Wenti, I believe that is, with some dead leaves on the top. I've also got the Schefflera macrophylla here, which I'll be overwintering for the first time. It just isn't big enough yet to fend for itself outside, so I'm going to be bringing that in and changing the medium that it's in as well. But yeah, all of these are going to need some love in order for me to see them again next year. I'll take you on a brief walk around to share what my overwintering plans are for the garden. Now, this is my third year, I believe, overwintering these plants, at least some of them. And as a general principle this year, I'm going to be a bit more experimental. I am going to leave some plants in the ground and see what happens. I have got insurance plants in some cases, but not in all. But I'd like to see how hardy this garden actually is. I've still got lots of colour as well, which I'm pleased about, especially since the garden didn't really get going until later on. So it's nice to be heading into November, still with lots of colour to enjoy. But the weather is about to take a turn. The weather forecast suggests that we've got about another week of 8 to 9 degrees at night. Thereafter, we're expecting a plunge down towards 1s, 2s, 0s. So it is time now to get moving. So if I start in this corner, you'll see I have a beautiful Colocasia Escalenta here, which is in the ground. Something had the end off that, probably a local fox who likes to visit from time to time. I am planning on leaving this one in the ground. I did divide that one, and so I do have an insurance plant, but I would like to see how this gets on simply with a mulch, so I will do that. There are some cannas around it which I'm also going to leave in the ground this year and mulch them over in the hopes that they return. If they don't, it's a lesson learned, but I'm going to try. If I can save myself the hassle of pulling plants up and bringing them inside and dry storing and all of that, then I'm going to give it a go. Moving next to the Gunnera, I believe this is a Tinctoria. I don't think it's a Manicata. I don't get really too caught up in the arguments over which types they are. It's a Gunnera of some sort, and as you can see, it's not grown massive and it's not overgrown this space, which was a worry when I originally planted it. The leaves have stayed a manageable size and I'm happy to keep it here. It means I've got the lovely shape of the Gunnera without the menacing massive leaves. They may well come in the future. If they do, I'll move it then, but for now it can remain here. So this one I will be protecting simply using its own leaves. I'm sure you'll have seen this on other videos where you chop the leaves off, chop the stems, build a bit of a teepee around it in order to protect the crown, which is right in the middle there, and that is the brain of this plant. So I will be protecting that, but with its own leaves. Moving to the right, I've got some cannas there in a container. I left those out last winter and mulched with some tree bark, and that was sufficient. They haven't flowered this year. They did get going quite late, to be fair, but I'm going to be leaving those out. Here we have one of my favourites, the Impatiens. Now I have brought this in for the last couple of years, so I may well chop it down a little, change the soil and bring it in to the conservatory. Now there may be more experienced growers out there who do something different, but because that's worked and I really do like this plant, I'm going to do it again. If you grow this and you leave yours outside, do let me know, and also your location so I can see whether or not it's worth me trying the same. Moving along to the sago palm, I have brought this in for the last 2 years, and the main reason for that is that if the leaves go brown, if they get browned off by the frost, they take a long time to reflush. I've only had a single new leaf this year, and if you have a look at this one, the leaves, when they brown off with the frost, that's what happens to them. And these sagos with that type of leaf all over do not look good at all. So I bring that in purely for an aesthetic reason. I do have more tender fern here, which I also bring inside. I'll do that again. It's a beautiful fern. I believe it's in the ladder fern family, but I do bring that in each year, and I'll do the same again. The Phoenix Robelenii, that's also coming in. There's no way that will last if I leave it outside, and so I'll bring that into the conservatory. And generally when I bring plants in, I do change the medium that they're in. Don't want to bring in any worms or slugs into the house, so I will go ahead and do that. Moving along, the colourful cordylines. I've touched on this in my colourful cordyline video recently. I'm going to do what I did last year, which is tie up the leaves to protect the crown, cover that in fleece, and then put a plant pot over the top in order to keep the rain off the growing point. I'll do that with both of these and leave them outside. A Musa Basjou in a pot there, which has done great really. The original one died off and sent me 3 in return. I'm not too worried about these going. I've got quite a few Musa Basjou behind me in the border to replace them if they do, but what I may well do with these is take the leaves off, wrap the 3 main stems in fleece, put something plastic over the top and see how it gets on, and if it comes back, it comes back. I'm not too worried about those. Okay, the majority of plants in this area are going to be just fine outside. As for the palms in this area, the Fortunii at the back will be totally fine in the winter. That one's been outside for 2 winter seasons now, I believe, and it's been absolutely fine. I've got a baby Chimerops there, which last year was in a pot near the house, which I may give some fleece around. I've got a hybrid Trachea there, which again is in that planter for the first time this winter. I may well protect that as well with a little fleece in the coldest of nights. A green cordyline here, which last year again I believe I brought in purely because I was sick of losing them. I don't know, this year I think I'll leave it outside and try some fleece, similar to what I do with the colourful cordylines. Fortunii there, which will be absolutely fine. Pink China Colocasia, I'll take the leaves off that, cut it down to the base and mulch it over real good. That should keep and come back with no issues. In here I have a Dixonia Antarctica, which has only managed to give me 2 small leaves and a couple of baby leaves this year after the winter took it down last year. I will try to protect that, but again, it's proven that it's very difficult to protect the very small ones. They don't like the cold, even when you protect them well, which I did last year. It just didn't come back anywhere near as good as it was before. Please forgive how messy the garden is with all the dead leaves I will be tidying up at some point, just haven't got round to it with how busy life has been. Okay, coming into this area, what do we have? Anything? I have a Chemops in here which I don't normally protect. It did spear pull about 1.5 years ago, but it came back, and I think based on that I'll leave it as it is. For my main Dixonia Antarctica tree fern, I'll do what I do every year, and I'll put straw into the crown, and sometimes when it gets really cold I'll wrap a little fleece around the top of the trunk as well. So that's how I'll protect that this year. Now if you move to the right here, you'll see that my Tetrapanax has dominated this middle space here. I have 2 of them and they formed a bit of a sheet. Now I'm going to let nature take its course with this and leave those leaves on. Yes, they will die back as soon as we hit those really cold temps. However, to start off with, they are forming a little bit of a protective sheath for this area, which I'm going to let them continue to do. Now looking at the trunks that are forming, to me they're still pretty diddy, and it's very tempting to protect those. And if we get sub-zero temps for a sustained amount of time, I may well fleece them temporarily just so that I can protect them and hopefully start off with some height with those this year. To be fair, there's so much going on here that if they do get some height, they're going to be clashing with everything else that's going on. However, this is a work in progress. Gardening is art, and we will work with what we've got when the time comes. I've got a Beautia here, which as you can see is now just in the wrong place. Always was in the wrong place arguably, but I'm working with a small area. Not much happened with it this year anyway, only threw out the 1 spear, and even that hasn't done well enough to open. But I will still protect this, and what I did last year I'll do again. I wrapped the base and the crown in fleece. I then covered the whole thing with a fleece bag, and inside that fleece bag was an umbrella that was open so that I could protect that growing point from water. So I'll do the same thing again. Right, my Musabaz due. What do I do with this little lot? Okay, so you'll see that I have a few here, 3 pseudo stems in this clump. I've also got another pseudo stem there with some pups around it. That one's going. I'm going to move it from here because there's just too much going on, and it was growing up into the Indian bean tree and it's a little bit of an eyesore. So I'll be leaving these 3 main stems, and because of the height I've got this year, the stems being now taller than me, I am going to try my best to protect them. I know they'll come back from the base, and I know that these are very, very hardy indeed. However, I'm at a point now where I can actually see what these plants can do, and with that amount of height I want to see how much taller they can grow. So I am going to protect those. What I did last year, I'll put a link in the corner so that you can see the lengths I went to. It involved chicken wire and straw. I'll save talking you through it now. You can just click on that video and have a little look, but it was very successful, and it's enabled me to have this gorgeous height this year. I mean, look at that. I just think they are magnificent. I know that a lot of tropical style gardeners grow these, and you know, they're widely available. We see them all the time. However, I just do not get bored looking at that. Seeing that in a cold climate, heading towards November in the UK, I still see that as a real novelty. So I'll do what I can do to protect those. Last year, I got scissor happy around winter and started taking plants down to help them out. I'm not doing that this year. I did it with the Amicia zygomaris, and I believe it affected the way it grew back. So I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let nature do what it does. Here we have more of the Amicia zygomaris. You can see how leggy it's become. I'm just leaving it to wind down itself in the winter. The leaves on it are so beautiful, aren't they? They really are. I did the same with the honeybush or the Melianthus major last year. I chopped it down to help it out. not this year. Let's see what the winter does and see if the plant comes back of its own volition. Last year it didn't, so I'm going to see what happens this year. I'm not touching it, it can stay there. This Tetrapanax leaves are slightly bigger than the others. Again, we do have a trunk that has formed. It's only short though, so I may well protect that in the coldest of nights, but I'll remove it so that we don't rot the trunk off. But yeah, staying outside and letting nature take its course. We've got the Enseti Morellii there, and typically it's looking at its most glossy and beautiful just as it's about to say goodnight. So I will be taking that out, and I have got a video on what I do to overwinter that. It's been successful now for 2 years running, so why change it? I'll do exactly the same. Essentially it involves cutting all the leaves off, digging the plant out, draining the stem of moisture and keeping it indoors in an empty pot. I think that's about it for what I'm going to be doing to overwinter my garden this year. It really is an evolving picture, and I will have some work to do in the spring, but that's exactly why we do this, isn't it? We never want to run out of things to do. So I'll have lots to work on in the spring in terms of design, in terms of moving things. I'm looking forward to it already. This year's weather has been a little hit and miss, I should say. So I've not been able to enjoy this garden anywhere near as much as I wanted to. But it's not put me off one bit. Gardening is so rewarding.